Oceangate, Stockton Rush, Narcissist, Part 10. We continue by analysing excerpts from the interview that took place between the journalist David Pogue of CBS and Stockton Rush. Pogue asks, "So, once we're down there, what are the things to worry about?" Rush states, "What I worry about most are things that will stop me from being able to get to the surface. Overhangs, fishnets, entanglement hazards. And that's just a technique, piloting technique. It's pretty clear. If it's an overhang, don't go under it. If there is a net, don't go near it. So you can avoid those if you are just slow and steady." It turned out that the Titanic dive could not take place as a consequence of bad weather, and therefore Rush proposed a consolation dive for the CBS News special, namely that they would dive the continental shelf, the Grand Banks, 80 miles away. Rush said we might see shark breeding grounds, stunning towering underwatering cliffs, and maybe marine creatures nobody's ever seen before. So on the morning of our dive, we woke at 4 a.m, and Pogue said he was exhausted but excited. Pogue explains that the weather's bad today at the Titanic, so we sailed 80 miles through the night to the continental shelf, where the CBS crew is being offered the chance to go down in the sub. Not nearly as deep, not as long as the Titanic dive, but it's still going to be a thrill. He explained that 5 of them climbed into the Titan: Stockton Rush, the pilot Steve Ross, a deep-sea marine biologist Nelson White, an indigenous artist and friend of the company, producer Anthony Laudato, wielding the camera, and Pogue. Rush explains you'll feel a lot of bumping. Sometimes there's some banging. Don't worry about it. All that can happen is something on the outside can get hurt. We're not getting hurt. We are now the safest 5 people on the planet. This is an interesting form of reassurance. It's basically saying, if you can hear people screaming on the outside, they're the ones that are getting hurt. You're going to be perfectly fine, so don't worry. All that he cares about, care possibly in inverted commas, is what's going on inside the submersible. He's not interested if there's banging and bashing going on outside. It's a strange form of reassurance that he's providing, and is rather dismissive, and would show that in a way that he's trying to convince somebody that they're going to be safe, but at the same time he does so by showing a flagrant disregard for anybody else that might be affected by what's going on the outside. The journalist then explains that they are floating, and they could hear a lot of clanking, and out of the little round window they could see the crew running around on the platform preparing to sink it. Rush explains, "We've just completed phase 1 of the launch process, which is launching the sub and platform from the back deck. Look outside and we've got some 6 to 8 foot swells every so often, but generally calm. That went fairly smoothly, and they're going to come and prepare the platform for the next phase, which is the sinking." The journalist explains the water was aqua and bubbly as we went down. Rush then explains we're underwater. Pogue states, "Oh, we're underwater, 12 metres, that's something like 36 feet. Hull integrity, holding." He goes on to state this was it. This was the precise moment when the divers went to unclip the sub from the platform, and that's precisely when Kyle, up in the bridge of the ship, radioed us. Rush, "Go ahead topside." Radio, "Looks like we lost a couple of buoys." Rush, "In that they sunk all the way under or they came undone?" Radio, "They came undone." Nelson, "I can see them floating around in the background." Rush, "It's not an exact science, right down to knot tying." So again, there is this almost dismissive attitude. You may recall earlier that the expert explained it was a very precise industry, but with Rush, it's more slipshod than that. Poe comments, "So apparently those floats came off the platform, and that wasn't supposed to happen." Rush had to make a hard decision in a hurry. Do we care about a couple of stupid boys when underwater cliffs and shark breeding grounds are calling out to us? Well, this is Stockton Rush we're talking about. With a knowing smile and a steely glint in his eye, he picked up the radio handset, held it to his mouth and announced his decision. They were going to carry on. There, the interview and the piece about the involvement in the Titanic submersible ends, but it did provide some rather interesting observations. It demonstrates the various aspects of his personality, and it shows that again, there appears to be this focus on cutting corners and cutting costs. Repeatedly, he effectively, openly brags about saving cash on everything from discount lights, from Camping World to thinner, more cost-effective carbon fibre. And in those instances, what he does is he bases much of his marketing and his pitches essentially on bragging about how much he didn't actually spend upon the manned vessel, which he says is perfectly safe. We now know, albeit with the benefit of hindsight, that turned out not to be the case, and that it wasn't safe at all, as the submersible imploded with tragic consequences for those on board, including Stockton Rush. Repeatedly, Rush suggests that it's innovation that is driving his behaviour. Now, it might be one thing for Steve Jobs to stand on a stage and yell at Steve Wozniak that he's not going to give credit to a particular aspect of the Apple team because he wants to highlight other aspects of innovation. But here, the stakes are much higher. There's people's lives at risk because of the safety aspect of going under the sea with all of the problems that that can have. Stockton Rush repeatedly refers to innovation, as if that's the panacea to any particular problem that comes his way. I'm doing it in the name of innovation. I'm cost-cutting because it's innovation. I'm not adhering to the usual safety requirements because of innovation. There'll be some that might think that he's pioneering, but there'll be others that look at that and say that's a flagrant disregard for the safety of other people and is demonstrative of an absence of emotional empathy and a failure to be accountable for his behaviours. There'll be others, again, that might well suggest that it's nothing to do with innovation and everything to do with his greed, that he needs to be able to make more money, which potentially could be a residual benefit for him. The less that he could spend on this submersible, of course, the greater the profits that would be. And then that could well be the case that he would be able to get more people to invest because there was a greater return on this. He was aware that cutting these corners and cutting these costs would increase risk. He was repeatedly warned about this by engineers in his own company to other people operating in the submersible community. But each instance, he made a decision that he would in effect be risking his own life, which you may say, well, that's fair enough. If he wants to risk his own life, so be it. It's his life to throw away. But also, it would appear that he was risking the lives of other people as well, which shows recklessness and an absence of emotional empathy. There's also the fact that if it went wrong, that would necessitate rescue, costing millions of dollars. Once again, his haphazard approach to this whole enterprise in the name of innovation and believing it was perfectly safe would result in taxpayer expenditure. He doesn't seem to care about that. Whilst it did not save them, it might have been the case that it could have done, and in any event, significant amounts of money had been spent trying to save these individuals and locate them. Stockton Rush doesn't care about that, which again suggests that he operates with a sense of entitlement and a lack of accountability. We have looked at a significant body of evidence taken from a variety of sources, and now join me as we embrace the conclusion as to what Stockton Rush is.